Hey, so in this video, we're going to quickly go over the basic layout of the workspace in Illustrator. What's great is that once you learn this, you will be able to transfer those skills to any other Adobe piece of software. They really try and keep it consistent from Photoshop to Illustrator to even After Effects. And you'll notice a lot of similarities once you start getting into it. So to start out, when you open it up, you'll have this sort of preview window asking, what kind of document do you want to use? It'll also show you at the bottom documents that you've had open recently. So I've had a couple of things that I was working on, and those will pop up most recently here, as long as you're working on the same computer. To create a new document or create a new image, I'm going to click Create New. And over here, you'll see that I have a bunch of presets. So say I was designing a letter, an 8.5 by 11 inch letter, I would choose this. If I was creating something tabloid, 11 inches by 17 inches, that would be this here. And I'm going to get to talking about why it says points. Or if you're creating something for the web or presentation, these presets are all up here. But I honestly like to go in and change those myself, change these settings here. So the first thing I'm going to do over here is give myself a title, exercise. And then I can set the width and the height. Now you notice that right now this is set to points and I'm in letter. So this should be 8.5. And I can change that by changing the units of measurement to inches. And we'll see that change directly here. Since we're working online this semester, we're mostly going to be working in pixels. That's going to keep everything consistent. What's kind of cool is if I change this to pixels and I go in here and I'm like, oh, I really want to change this to 20 inches. Instead of changing the unit of measurement back, I can write 20 IN for inches and it'll automatically convert it to pixels. And I press tab to go between each of those different boxes. You see the blue highlight behind it. So to start out, I'm just going to make a square document. So 800, and I'm pressing tab and 800. And I don't need to put the unit if this is already set here. Orientation if you're changing between portrait and landscape. And here's the amount of artboards we're going to have. But for right now, we're going to keep one. That's the amount of different images that you can set on the screen. We can always change that later on. We're not going to worry about the bleed. We don't need to change that. We do need to come down here. The color mode is important. Since we're designing for the web and designing for digital space, we're going to click here and change this to RGB color. RGB color is what comes out of our computer light space. So a pixel, what you see on your screen, what I'm looking at on the screen right now, is emitted light. And so when you combine red, green, and blue together, you're going to get white. And that is an additive form of color. CMYK is a subtractive form of color. Cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. And that's what we use for printing. So when these are combined together, you'll get K for black. Didn't want to confuse it with blue. I guess that's the reason why here. But since we're designing for the web, we're going to keep it with RGB. And since we're designing in digital space, I'm going to switch this down to screen, 72 pixels per inch. That's the density of images on your screen, the amount of pixels per inch. This is going to keep our designs more lightweight and with less loading time than if we use 300 pixels per inch. And we're going to pretty much keep that for the entire semester for right now. And then you say create, and you are left with this beautiful blank canvas. Now, yours may look a little bit different when you open this up. So yours probably looks like this. Now, I prefer, and I think it's a little bit easier, to be in a workspace called Essentials Classic. And I'm going to go through and talk about all of the sort of, briefly what each of these little areas are. So to change the workspace, to start out, I'm going to click up top here and change this to Essentials Classic. And we can also do that same thing by going to Window, Workspace, and Essentials Classic. Now these are all in alphabetical order. You'll find that a lot of the windows here are in alphabetical order. Now this is our canvas. The way that we can zoom in or zoom out is by pressing Control minus or Control plus or Command plus or Control plus or Command plus. We can zoom in and out. This here is our toolbar. Each of these creates a particular tool. And so when we look at this, we'll see that this has different types of arrows, different shapes, and I'm going to go through a majority of these within the next videos. We can see the colors that we're using. And over here on this side, these are different flyout windows for particular settings that you want to create, such as changing the stroke weight, changing the colors. And when you hover over each one, you'll see a little tooltip pop up. So down here, even if I didn't know what this symbol was, if I hover over and let my mouse stay there for a couple seconds, we'll see exactly what that does. So as I was talking about earlier, if I wanted to add artboards, this one here, I could click here and it would add more. Up here at the top, we see the title of our image that we're working on. We see the zoom and we see the color space that we're working in. When I zoom in, you'll see that increases. And if I press Control or Command 0, that will zoom it back out to fit on the screen. And this is a great tool to use for Acrobat, Photoshop, any other Adobe program. Command or Control 0 works to zoom it totally out. Here we can see certain settings such as the stroke, the opacity, the style. We're going to get into these. For right now, this is just the basic sort of setting that we have and workspace that we have for Adobe Illustrator.